both in class and regular service time next week. Okay, those who are helping with the play, you will be both in the class time and regular worship time practicing next week. So keep that in mind. While they're making their way out, if you want to turn to Matthew 27, I'm drop mine. Matthew 27. Isn't it good to be here today? How many of you worked outside yesterday? Okay, my hands go up. It was a beautiful day to be outside and doing some things. I hated that some of you didn't get to do that if you enjoy doing that. We were looking forward to a day like that, and it was just a beautiful day to do that. Matthew 27, beginning in verse 38. I want to read a section here, and I wanted to read this one first because sometimes I think we miss a part of this one guy's life. And before we start reading there, there was this fellow, and we're going to talk about him this morning, that had to go to the cross. Normally, when we think of somebody that had to go to the cross, we think of Jesus. I would have expected you to think of Jesus. This guy wasn't Jesus. We don't know really anything about his life, except for the fact that he was a thief. We're going to learn a few things about him. But we don't know what happened to him before. We don't know if he could have very well been a disciple of John the Baptist. I mean, one that at least went out and heard him, maybe was baptized by John the Baptist. There's all kinds of speculation about this man. And as we read about him, you'll see why there's all kinds of speculation. But we don't know how he was raised. We don't know what kind of family he had. We just don't know that. Except for by the time that it came time for Jesus to be crucified, this man was being crucified as well as another man. This guy may have heard Jesus preach. He may have been in the crowds and hearing the things that Jesus said at the various places. Maybe there in Jerusalem, maybe the week before being crucified, even. He may have been in the arena, if you will, where Pilate was located when a sentence of judgment was given to Jesus and Barabbas, the murderer, was let go. And you could actually, if he were present, because, there were definitely Barabbas that, seemingly was there. But if he was able to hear that, even with the questioning that might go on in somebody's mind, this guy's a murderer and he's going free, I'm a thief, and I'm going to a cross. I don't get that. There's all kinds of speculation you could have. But let's read here in Matthew chapter 27, beginning in verse 38. And we'll read down to verse 44. It says, at that time 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those passing by were hurling abuse at him, wagging their heads, and saying, you who are going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. In the same way the chief priests also, along with the scribes and the elders, were mocking him and saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we shall believe in him. He trusts in God, let him deliver him now. If he takes pleasure in him, for he said, I am the Son of God. And then verse 44, and the robbers also who had been crucified with him were casting the same insult at him. The robbers, plural. They were both doing it at first. We see this as well recorded in other Gospels, and yet we have the Gospel of Luke. Turn I'm reading from the New American Standard Translation, if anybody's wondering. Beginning in verse 39, it says, "And one of the criminals who were hanged there was hurling abuse at him, saying, 'Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us.' But the other answered and rebuking him said, 'Do you not even fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong.' And he was saying, 'Jesus, remember me when you come in your kingdom.' And he said to him, 'Truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise.'" I'm not sure what it was that took place, that at first both thieves were hurling the same insults that we read that the leaders of the Jews were shouting to Jesus. And both of them taking part in that while being hung on a cross as well. But something happened. I mean, it very well could have been, and if you look up at the verse, into verse 34 of this chapter that we're reading in Luke 23, it says, "But Jesus was saying, 'Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing.'" I mean, that was one of the statements that Jesus made while hanging on the cross. "Father, forgive them. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing." We see this echoed by Stephen later on, when he's being stoned to death. You read in Acts. It's not something that is impossible for us as humans to be able to muster, if you will, to have the forgiveness within our hearts of somebody who is doing something that is not just insulting us, but is destroying us, seemingly. At least our life here. But you think about the moment of somebody hanging on a cross and saying those words, what kind of an impact would that have? If we never read it before, if we never heard it read before, if we hadn't seen it, and we just learned that Jesus, while hanging on the cross, said, "Father, please forgive them." Does that not have an impact? To know that someone could do that, to know that somebody, and words had to be extremely hard at this point. Words had to be difficult simply to say. You're hanging on a cross. I mean, being able to take a breath and to get out of your mouth what you want to say. I mean, we look at the amount of things that was said, and we have those few phrases of Jesus on the cross. Well, no wonder there are a few phrases. Jesus could have miraculously, if he would have wanted to, filled his lungs completely and preached while he was hanging on the cross. But that wasn't the point. I mean, that's what he was doing physically. Jesus in John chapter 1 is called the Word. I mean, he is God's communication to us. What more communication do we need than he's giving his life? But Jesus didn't use these abilities at all. I mean, he could have done what they were casting the insults at him and saying, "Why don't you come down if you're the Son of God?" He could have. He could have called for 10 legions of angels to come deliver him off of the cross, or he could have just come down himself. Again, that wasn't the point. Jesus himself said, "But for this hour I came. This is the reason I'm here." And so now he's saying, in a few words, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Maybe that is what had the impact on this thief on the cross. Whatever it was, whether it was Jesus' words, whether it was simply the way he was taking what was being done to him, one of the robbers stopped casting insults, and now he was scolding the other one for doing so. This passage on the thief on the cross We could spend a lot of time in theological arguments on this passage because people do. If you go on the internet and you search this, that's pretty much all you find is arguments over deathbed confessions, one way or another, back and forth, arguments over the fact that this was a special circumstance with Jesus, and so Jesus was able to make this proclamation about this man being in paradise, arguments over whether or not you need to be baptized into Christ, because the thief on the cross was not baptized into Christ, and then other arguments that come from the other standpoint, showing the scriptures that are telling us that you can find all kinds of things that simply tear the passage up theologically. And I'm afraid in doing so we miss the point. I want you to notice these words that we just read from verse 39 through 43. The first thing was a recognition on the part of this man of God's involvement in what was going on, in what was happening. He says, "Do you not even fear God? Aren't you afraid of God in this circumstance?" And that could have been in reference to Jesus himself. I mean, that statement. I mean, did we not have the rest of the man's statement and what he was saying to the other thief, and also what he said to Jesus? I mean, we could take it that maybe he was referring to Jesus when he said that, but here it was the hour of death. Life is done. You're hanging on the cross. There's not very good odds that you're going to live for very much longer. There's not very good odds that you're going to experience any more of life, that you're going to laugh anymore, that you're going to joke around with your friends, that you're going to enjoy a nice meal. I mean, those things of physical life that this man had experienced, maybe, I mean, we don't know what his life was like, but up to this point, that wasn't going to continue. That in and of itself, wouldn't it cause you to think about God? And so he asked the question to the other thief, "Don't you even fear God?" Secondly, in the same sentence when he said that, "Do you not even fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation?" He says, "And we indeed justly, for we are receiving what we deserve for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." We suffer justly. We deserve what's happening to us. The recognition of imperfection. But not just the recognition of imperfection, the recognition of, I'm wrong. I'm here because of what I did. I am where I am at in life. This guy hanging on a cross. I'm where I'm at because of me. And only me. He wasn't blaming society. He wasn't blaming his parents. He wasn't blaming anybody else. He said, we're here justly. This was a cruel form of death, folks. The Romans had researched into death that would make an impact on society, on a punishment that would make an impact on society. The one thing that Rome could not tolerate was uprisings. And they couldn't tolerate it because if they did, their empire would fall apart. They had seen these things happen before. Caesar had seen what could happen if you had disloyalty among the ranks. And so choosing a form of execution that would be extremely public, extremely cruel, was simply a way of deterring man seemed to accept the fact that what was happening to him was what he deserved. We wouldn't think so. I mean, we can have discussions over capital punishment, and we can even look back into the old law and see those things, but somebody being crucified for sin. But this man had come to grips with that. If not before, at least at this point. And maybe it is when you have a comparison. You know, it's one thing to say, well, what I'm doing is not so bad. You know, if you're comparing it to something that's worse, or that you think is worse, then maybe what you're doing isn't so bad. But when you compare it to somebody who has done nothing wrong, then it's wrong. Then it's bad. And so it deserves a penalty. He says, here's a man hanging between us, and he has done nothing to deserve this. He's innocent. And you're going to say this to him, don't you fear God? We have the same punishment as he, but he didn't do anything wrong. We deserve it. He doesn't. He has an expression of faith. He says, Jesus, remember me when you come in your kingdom. There's really kind of 2 points here. One, an expression of faith, that he's calling on Jesus. He's asking Jesus to remember him. And he's also recognizing Jesus as king. I mean, there's one thing, I don't know exactly how the crosses were situated. You know, if you look at the pictures, you can tell. Because we don't have those, do we? Not really. So I'm not exactly sure how they were all situated. Right above Jesus' head was King of the Jews. Pilate insisted upon it. And so maybe that knowledge in his mind, or maybe simply of things that he had heard, things that he had seen, and already the response that he had seen of Jesus toward the people that were doing this to him. But however it was that he recognized it, he recognized Jesus as the king, because he says, remember me, you come in your kingdom. When you look at that statement, it's really remarkable when considering how little even the apostles understood about Jesus' kingdom at this point. Even after his resurrection, and he had been appearing to them for 40 days, in Acts chapter 1, they were still asking questions about the physical kingdom. Still not completely understanding what it was Jesus had done. And so this man's understanding, at least at this point, he was still talking about Jesus being a king and coming in his kingdom, and here he was hanging on a cross. That is a statement of faith, isn't it? Jesus is hanging on a cross, and he's saying, remember me when you come in your kingdom. That's amazing. And he received a promise from Jesus. What a promise. Truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise. I want to take a few moments to compare these things that we recognize in this thief. Would you agree with what I've been saying about the thief? Things that he has recognized, the things that he has made statements about. So let's make application of this. For ourselves. What will it take for you to recognize God's involvement in your life? This man recognized that God was involved in what was happening to him because of the question that he asked the other thief. Don't you even fear God? Now, what does it take in your life for you to recognize God's involvement in what's going on in your life? You're not hanging on a cross right now. I know nobody is. Brandon may be standing over there on a stool in front of a cross amazing how many times when somebody is close to death and they realize it, that they know God's involved. And they recognize God's involvement in their life. Why is it that we fail so often to recognize that involvement on a regular basis? That God is involved in what's happening to us. What is it going to take? That's the question. Is it going to take a cross? We had his, didn't we? What will it take to understand that the justice for you, justice for me, is condemnation? You ever ask for justice? I want justice. I don't. Folks, I've sinned. How about you? We are sinners. We have fallen short of the glory of God. Romans chapter 3 and verse 23. Romans 6 and 23. I mean, we've all fallen short. We've all sinned, and the wages of sin then is death. We, as much as a thief that is hanging on a cross, should recognize that that's what we deserve. We don't deserve to live because we've sinned. Who's the giver of life? Who's the giver of life? God? Okay. If we've sinned, what have we done to it? Considered it as nothing? Because the wages of sin is death. I mean, we've done what produces death. As a man was hanging on a cross, he recognized that in and of himself, and the other guy that was hanging over there. But this guy in the middle didn't do anything wrong, but he hung there. Why? The thief seemed to at least get the point, Jesus, remember me. What is it going to take to recognize what we deserve? What will it take for you to understand that Jesus lived without guilt? That Jesus was completely innocent? And then to recognize the magnitude of that. For a guy hanging on the cross and seeing somebody innocent hanging on the cross, it was a big deal. We deserve it. He's hanging here. He doesn't deserve it. He didn't do anything wrong. He's innocent. If he was tempted like as we are, yet without sin, even as the Hebrew writer describes to us, yet without sin. You know, our minds go sometimes to the big temptations, right? You know, the big things. What about the little things? The things that we so easily seem to maybe write off as if we can. But that Jesus didn't sin once. And yet he hung on the cross. What is it that brings us to the point of expressing our faith in him? For some, you've already done that, and hopefully are continuing to do that. You know, it's not a one-time thing. He who confesses me, I will confess before my Father in heaven. He who denies me, I will deny before my Father who is in heaven. Matthew chapter 10, verse 32. That we confess our faith in him and who he is. But what will it take for you if you haven't done that? Jesus, if you will, made this kind of a confession in John chapter 18 before Pilate. And Pilate was questioning him about being a king. Finally, Jesus' answer, it was for this that I was born and came into this world. But my kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my subjects would be fine. But it's not. I don't know how much the thief understood, but he understood and he believed that Jesus was a king and his kingdom was coming. If you believe that Jesus is a king, how about his kingdom? And then a last thing that we looked at for this man was he received a promise from Jesus. There's a promise, and I mean Jesus makes it, and it's about what we've been talking about. It's about faith in Him. It's about believing in Him. It's about recognizing who He is and who we are. But it's a verse that uses the word promise, and it's because Peter was talking to people who got to this very point. Some of the very people who were shouting, "Crucify Him, crucify Him," that sent Him to that cross in Acts chapter 2. Peter says, "You, through wicked hands, crucify Him." In the process of doing that and concluding that Jesus was Lord and Christ, in verse 36 of chapter 2, they got it. To some degree, it didn't take a cross for them. It took Jesus' cross, but it didn't take them hanging on the cross to get it. But for the thief that was hanging there, when he was first there with Jesus, what we read in Matthew just a little bit earlier, he was casting himself too. But in the process of hanging on a cross, he came to some realization. Talk about God's timing. If this man was, and God knowing our hearts, God knowing who we are, and knowing our response, He knows what it's going to take for you. For any of this. He knows how much it's going to take to get you to see God. To get you to see Jesus. To get you to recognize Him as King. He knows. And so when you're going through something that's a little bit difficult, do we ask the question, why? We do. Even Job did. And it wasn't just a little bit difficult. His whole life was turned upside down. He lost his kids. He lost everything he had. And yes, he asked why. But this man hanging on the cross, it was exactly what he needed. Now think about that for a minute. That's easy for me to say, isn't it? But had this man not been hanging on a cross beside Jesus, would he have seen? Would he have come to the realizations that he came to? Had he not been hanging on a cross? And so when we go through the things that we go through, maybe we need to see what God is saying. This man needed a cross. But now here are these people, and it says they're pierced to their heart because of what they've done. Verse 37 of chapter 2, now when they heard this, they were pierced to the heart and said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, "Brethren, what shall we do?" And Peter said to them, "Repent, and let each of you be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins. And you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. For the promise," and here's the wording, "for the promise is for you and your children, and for all who are far off, as many as the Lord our God shall call to Himself." God's wanting to give you a promise too. if this story, and by the way, while we're talking about a cross, turn to Matthew 16. Let's not leave this down. Somebody read verse 24 if you would. Matthew 16. I read verse 24. Anybody?
Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me."
Do what? It still takes a cross. Not just his. It may not be a physical cross that we have to come to, but if we want to follow Jesus, we must deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. He said this before he went to the cross. If anyone wants to follow me, that's to deny himself, take up his cross. It still takes a cross. Yours. A cross of self-denial. A cross that says, I'm going to make him king. I'm going to make him Lord. I'm going to yield to him. It was the same thing these people were responding to later on. If you're inclined by this story to say, well, I can just put it off. I can wait. You know, this guy did. He evidently did whatever he wanted to do. He was a thief. I can put it off. Then at the last moment, remember something. There were two thieves. And even hanging on a cross didn't convince one of them. It's easy to become hardened in life. To put things off in life. To wait in life to respond to something that, yeah, we know with our heads, but we're not sure with our heart. And to wait to a point that even if you're hanging on a cross, you won't recognize it anymore. Because there were two things there. So we don't play those games with God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2, he says, in the acceptable time I listened to you. And on the day of salvation I helped you. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. And so it's now. And so there's no questions. There's no theological decisions that have to be made on the safety or the dangerousness of waiting. Now, we take up the cross and follow him. Praise team, let's come on up if you can. As a way of invitation, I just wanted us to take a few moments to look at a man who responded to Jesus in extremely unusual circumstances. But that God, working with him within his life, brought him to a point the way that evidently he had to be brought to a point. And very possibly, even as Jesus said, even one time of a man that was born blind, he was born blind not because he sinned or not because his parents sinned, as was some of the current theology of the day when Jesus was there, but rather as a response, he said, but to bring glory to God. That's the reason he was born this way. If God will have people born blind to bring glory to God, he can take a man to a cross because that's what he needs to convince him he needs God. And so wherever you're at on, or whatever you have experienced, what has God been doing and what is it going to take for you to recognize God's involvement with you? And to say, okay, I deny myself. I belong to you. The neat thing about that is, he gives you life back, only now it's his. Now he lives in you. And what
same sentence. Past, future, are brought into the present. What God has prepared for us in the future is, in a sense, present. Not in fullness, but just a foretaste. There's a sense, as we keep the supper, we're in the presence of the great marriage feast of the Lamb. Worship, especially, keeping the Lord's Supper, is meant to help us make real that the present will be possible in heaven. Excuse me. As we worship, we're present in the upper room, the golden altar before the heavenly throne. I love communion service, and I've always loved it. To me, it's the richest experience of worship that the church has to offer. I can find God in nature, beside the sea, or even under a rainbow in the sky, but nothing takes the place of being part of the family which gathers at the table of the Lord. I love the quietness, the distinctive beauty, the love of spiritual dignity, and the reverence of atmosphere which surrounds the celebration of Christians who believe Christ is the Son of God and accepts the cross as a means of one's personal salvation. The communion service is meaningful beyond all words. It is possible for the spiritual sensitive person to partake in the symbols of death of Jesus without feeling in some mysterious way that one has actually met God at that time. So to worship is, in a sense, to go home to heaven. We read from Mark these words, 14, verse 22 through 24. While they were eating, Jesus took bread. When he gave thanks, he broke the bread and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take, it is my body." Then he took the cup. When he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. "This is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many," he said to them. We invite all believers to partake with us at the elements are passed. Let's pray. Oh, Lord, thank you. Thank you, thank you. For your Son, Jesus, who is willing to take away those sins. Be the willing sacrifice